Welcome to the MBA News Digest webinar and podcast series. Hi, I'm Rodney Alsop. I'm founder of the MBA News Digest and your host for today's webinar. Today I'm joined by Nikki James, and Nikki is with Practera, and we'll learn a little bit more about Practera as we go through the webinar today. She has 8 years of teaching and leadership experience, 12 years of instructional design, program management, and 5 years in learning technology design. It's going to be a very interesting webinar today, and I appreciate your help with putting this together, Nikki, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Rodney. It's exciting to be able to join you today, and hopefully I can share some tips from my experience.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. Now, let me disclose here, I have no financial relationship with Nikki or Practera. So you're thinking, well, why did Rodney invite Nikki to join us today? Well, first, I think it's important for the MBA News Digest subscribers to see what EdTech partners are available out there today. It seems like just about every month I'm seeing a new EdTech partner or potential partner for you all to crop up. And I want to share that information with you. I want to make sure that you have it available to you. This is particularly important, I think, because unfortunately, some of the professional meetings that you all attend do not allow vendors to participate, vendors like Practera to participate. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to start introducing these EdTech startups. And who knows, it could be one of these that saves one of your programs one of these days because of their innovations. First thing I want to do is talk to you just a little bit about this webinar and podcast series. I created this so we could drill down. It's mostly for graduate program managers and their staff so that we can look at things from around the world and then drill down on anything that we want to. Let me share just a few things about the News Digest and what it is I do. First of all, I curate and aggregate articles that are focused on GME programs and curriculum management. I pull this stuff together, I sift through and sort and try to pull together 20 to 30 articles a week and share them in an email update. Second, I do this podcast and webinar. We've talked about that a little bit. Third, I do write some program management related articles and post those to the blog. Those are available for you to read and share with your peers. The other thing that I do is I publish a quarterly aggregation report where I pull all of the news from each quarter together into a single report so that you don't have to do things like that. Then I also have some consulting, mentoring, and coaching engagements that I do, and a little bit of program staff and faculty workshop development along the way. So that allows me to keep up with everything that is going on. You can contact me by email, go to the website, there's a contact form there, or you can just reach me through Twitter. Now, the focus of our conversation today with Nikki is, number one, how to scope and evaluate industry projects and align with learning objectives, the learning objectives that you have in your program, your courses, and so forth. Number two, these things are going to get mismatched. The projects, the learning objectives, the students, and so forth, periodically they will get off track, and you need to be able to figure out how to get them back. She's going to share some information, some tips with us about that. And then finally, she's going to share with us some practical lessons. So basically, our learning objectives are fairly straightforward for this session. So now let me turn it over to Nikki to share with us a little bit about Practera and to drive us on for the next 8 or 10 slides. Nikki?
Yeah, thanks so much. So hi guys, it's great to be able to be, sharing some of our knowledge with you today. So just a little tiny bit of background on Practera as a company. So we're actually, if you haven't been able to tell by the accent yet, originally from Australia, and I've been working out of Boston in Massachusetts for about 12 months. And Practera as a company, we're really passionate about experiential learning. We've been operating in the experiential learning space for about 9 years. First, I was actually in working within MBA programs in Australia, and then went 4 years into the company Practera existing. I actually jumped out of working within the higher education space to working in the company itself, delivering work integrated learning programs that were collaborations between industry and higher education, and then really focused on the development and the design of the technology that would actually support those types of learning experiences. So that's kind of a bit of what we do. We kind of started out in the services side of delivering experiential learning with industry partners and corporations, and then have slowly moved more into the technology side of that and supporting other people as they deliver these experiences.
Nikki, let me interrupt you here a second. Could you give us about a 50,000 foot view of how you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out, just a short story, we started out as inside Deloitte. So we were looking at work integrated learning and experiential learning from the industry side, and wanting to work out how we could help our graduates before they left university. So we were essentially trying to blur the line between learning and the workplace, and so offered learning programs that were embedded into curriculum that were actually co-delivered by the industry partner and the faculty, and the students were working in project teams to do an innovation project while they're also developing their professional skills. So they did some classes with their professors, some classes on site at Deloitte, and then they worked through and solved problems that Deloitte was working on with their customers. So that was really complex, a complex process to deliver those experiences when we started working with multiple universities. So one of our co-founders is a MIT computer science graduate. So he started coding our problems away by trying to systemize a lot of the repetitive processes that we were doing and all of the labor-intensive paper-based things that we were doing to make these programs happen. He was building technology solutions that would sit underneath our services. And then 5 years ago was when a lot of our university partners and corporate partners started asking to be able to use the technology in other programs that they were running. So we actually built the technology underneath the running of experiential learning programs, primarily in business schools.
Okay, so what you've done is found a need to develop your own technology to do the heavy lifting, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that these types of programs could be offered to a broader range of students, and also to, I guess, ensure that there's a great experience on all sides.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just a little slide. I'm not going to labor this too much, but a little slide that talks about some of the customers that we've worked with and some testimonials of programs that we've done and things like that. So I'll probably leave that one there. That's just for you to have a look at to see. We've operated we work with most higher education institutions in Australia. There's a lot more here than there are there, but and worked really closely with MBA programs and Masters of Management programs in most of those institutions, doing their capstone units and other programs where they're moving towards a project-based paradigm in all of their learning. So it's been really fun to collaborate and work with them.
Okay, so is it safe to say that Deloitte was your first client in Australia?
Yes, Deloitte was our first client, quickly followed by EY or Ernst & Young, I think they're more known for here, and the University of Sydney was the first university that we worked with.
Okay.
So, and Deloitte and EY are both still customers today.
Okay, how about the U.S.?
In the US, the first university we worked with, we've been working with is Boston University. So here in the US so far, we've mainly been working as in that technology SaaS delivery model. So we've been working with the university partners to embed the technology in programs that they're already running. So we don't work directly with the industry partners here. We work with the universities to embed the technology so that they can better support their own industry partners and students that they already have in these sorts of collaborations, and be able to do them at greater scale.
Okay, so in Australia, you started with industry client, or the industry clients started this in effect with a need they had, but in the US, it's university driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we started we started actually inside Deloitte as a company. So the team, our founding team, were actually employees of Deloitte, trying to solve Deloitte's problem of not having graduates that were ready to work as fast as what they needed them to be ready to work, but didn't want to put the onus of that problem completely on the higher education institutions. They wanted to be part of the solution, and saw the solution being an approach that they did collaboratively together. So Deloitte at the time had a great partnership with the University of Sydney. And to this day, we still partner collaboratively with Deloitte and the University of Sydney to actually really work out how to solve those types of problems. So over the course of the relationship with those two universities, Deloitte went from not even being on the preferred place to work list in Australia to being number 2 on the list. And a lot of that is the awareness that they generated through getting involved in this problem and working towards solving this problem and providing solutions for students in this space. And yeah, we continue to work with them in the University of Sydney. They do a lot of our innovation and trial new things that we're building and let us know how they're working. So yeah, it's been a fun collaboration between the three of us for the last 9 years.
So would it be safe to say there was an unintended consequence of building better relationships between clients and universities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's led to some really innovative thinking, and I think it's taught us, like when we now break that industry higher education collaboration down into a project, into the granular detail of a project coming from the industry partner and a learning need coming from the higher education side, and being able to look at how you enable both outcomes and work together to make sure that both sides of the equation is getting their outcomes met, as well as the students as well. So you've almost got a third party in there. So it really is a 3-party problem. And a lot of the time what we see in our work is that sometimes there isn't a balance there, and maybe the industry partner is being too demanding, or the institution might be not flexible enough to get the industry outcome need met. And so there's this mismatch that happens in these types of collaborations, and we look at it very much as a mutually beneficial type situation where there needs to be equal value and equal input on all 3 sides, for the educator, the industry partner, and the student. And that's the only way it works. We've seen it work in a really sustainable way.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a wonderful outcome. And you've got a great track record, or at least with these numbers.
Yeah, we have since 2015, we've successfully supported over 30,000 students doing some form of industry engaged learning, and that involved 3,000 industry participants, so individuals that are involved from the industry side, and about 1,500 projects that students have done for industry partners as part of that. And that's been at all academic levels as well. We've done some in the undergrad. The bulk was originally in the master's level programs, but what we've been able to do through the structuring that the technology brings is actually enable, I guess, more industry engaged learning to happen more frequently throughout the degree, so that the students are better prepared for once they do get to those capstone experiences. So it's been a fun journey.
I can imagine. I don't want to put you on the spot, and I don't know if you even measure it this way, but those 1,500 successful projects, is there any way to assign a dollar amount to what benefit the company's received?
Look, we have done that in some of the programs. We did an analysis. The original program that we did with Deloitte was an innovation accelerator, and so we worked out 5 years after the program had ran. We did an analysis of the ideas that the students came up with, and if an idea that was similar to theirs had received some sort of seed or Series A funding, not actually the idea that they came up with, but another idea, another actual company that started that idea, and it was over $1 billion in funding. And so what we saw as the main value of that particular program for Deloitte was a strategic radar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they started to use it for. The students were doing a lot of thinking of what were the cool things that were coming up, what were the interesting things that the university, well, what were the interesting things that were going to come into the market, because usually it was about 2 or 3 years later that we started to see the ideas that the students were coming up with getting funding in the tech startup world. And so that was a really interesting learning and a value that we were able to show Deloitte that they were getting through the participation in the program. And then they also looked at it, the mentors that were mentoring the students in the program and actually doing that, they were getting professional development training at the same time. So they were actually learning how to lead and mentor and coach in a low stakes environment. So they kind of put value on that from the L&D perspective as well. So there's a lot of ways that we've looked at what the value is on the industry side and working out how to articulate that.
Amazing. Well, let's move on to the project learning fit discussion, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the reason I kind of came up with this is something that I thought I could share is when I don't know if she's on the line, but Jordan from CapSource did a webinar, I think it was several months ago now. A lot of the data from the survey from that came up about this: how do we help industry partners scope a project, or how do we make that match? So I wanted to kind of share some of our learnings and the things that we've tried to implement and have implemented in the course of our journey of trying to get to the scale that we're at. And one of the first learnings that we had was that number one point that I have on the page, like, give the industry partners a template, not a blank page. And we that served two purposes for us. One, it helped them almost step through the thinking of scoping the project. So if you're asking them to fill in a brief, what is a 500-word blurb of the organization, and then what's the problem that they're facing, and how have they tried to solve that problem, and things like that. So it enabled them to the template enabled them to think through how, like, the project, and it got more information for the students, and the industry partner had done more thinking about the project. And the second thing as well is if you're working in those paradigms where you are doing capstones with multiple industry partners working with different project teams or different student teams, it meant that there was some sort of structure and similarity to what the students were getting at the beginning of the program, because you offer the template to the industry partner and they fill it out. So there was some uniformity that took away some of the problems we were having with students questioning around equity and that sort of thing as well. So that served two purposes. And then the second thing that we started doing, so we that templating got us so far and enabled us to get, I guess, more structured projects and more of the thinking out of the heads of the industry partners and onto paper. And then what we started to do, we realized that there were a lot of people really interested in getting involved in these types of things, but they weren't sure, they didn't they didn't really mind what they did, or they had no idea how to scope a project that was out of their I guess strategic priorities. And so what we started doing is giving suggestions, or almost pre-filled in templates related to the learning outcomes of whatever the course was that we were working on. So we have some programs that we run that the actual project that the students are doing is actually unrelated to the learning outcomes of the course, because learning outcomes of the course are project delivery and project management and teamwork type learning outcomes. But in the paradigm where the learning outcomes are the technical skills, like doing a competitor analysis or developing a business strategy, we would actually scope a project that aligned with the level of the students and the I guess the time that the students had to put into the project. And instead of going to the industry partner and trying to get a project out of them, we would offer, hey, do you have any of these things that you're working on right now that the students could do? And so we came up with 2 or 3 that might work. And so it helped align it to the learning outcomes already, instead of having to try and shoehorn the project into the learning outcomes after the fact, and kind of having mismanaged expectations.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the third one, just quickly, was giving more insight on the students and the course they're doing. So sharing learning outcomes, sharing the level of study, how much time the students are expected to work on the project, and examples of past projects. And I put in there in parentheses a realistic one. As much as we want to sell the amazingness of the students and what they can do, giving them the best project that you've ever had any student team do might be slightly give them unrealistic expectations that you'll then have to get to manage later on. It is we've found better to be realistic about what the students are going to be able to deliver, and then the industry partner can be scoping the project with those parameters in mind as well. And so you're getting closer to getting a matched project from the beginning.
Okay. Now, what percentage of the industry partners are repeat partners? Do you have a good retention rate?
Yeah, we're sitting around at the moment around 80%. I guess year on year, like there are, or program on program. So there's some people that do have some time off because they genuinely don't have a project that needs to be done or things like that. But we don't have a lot of attrition on the industry partner side once they see the value. It might not be the same person that does the project, but often they'll say, oh, I don't have a project right now, but let me share it with people within our organization. So we often get growth within the same organization, and have started now having more strategic relationships with different industry partners, where they're, different managers within the organization are taking responsibility to disseminate the information about potential opportunities within their organization. So we're getting like multiple projects from the same providers.
So what you have is a database of potential partners that the universities don't really have to, or the MBA programs don't really have to go out and search for.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can, we also run a lot of programs on behalf of the university. So we do the delivery of the experiences as well in some of the cases. And in other cases, we are also able to offer suggestions to our their MBA capstone projects, and introduce them to different corporate partners if we think that there's going to be an alignment there. Because a lot of the programs that we run ourselves for the institutions are lower level programs. They're not capstones. And so often a project may come along to us that we know is out of scope for the programs we run, but it might be a perfect fit for one of our MBA programs. So we definitely offer pass those along as well.
Do you have, well, I'm assuming you do have some partners that have been with you from year one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Deloitte was probably our first partner, and they're still with us today. We still run that innovation program that we run with them in multiple universities, and they've gotten involved in a lot of our other programs as well. And then we're still also working with Ernst & Young or EY. So they've stayed with us from the beginning. And we have a lot of partners that we're working with year on year. And one of our partners actually became one of the lead investors for our technology round when we did that in 2017. So we have really great relationships with the partners.
And you've got a mix of industries represented by the partners.
Yeah. We try and keep a balance between large corporate, government, NGO, and small business / startup.
Okay.
So we try and have a diverse range through those kind of 4 buckets of areas. And in each program, we try and make sure there's a mix of those different partner groups.
Now, if I understand everything that you've said so far, let me test something with you. Not every company project is a fit for a group of students. And given the skill sets of the students, they may not be a fit for the available projects. Is that a safe statement to say?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. You mentioned the template, and you have a sample.
This is an example of a template that we kind of put together. So with the information, I guess, that the industry partner can fill in. So initially, the template, as I mentioned in point 1, we gave them the template without any of this information in it. But then what we did, and I'll show you a list of the templates we have, like the pre-created projects we have at the end. But after we went through giving them just the template, what we started to see, because we're working at such large volumes of 1,500 projects, we started to see some themes of projects that were coming up over and over and over again that industry partners needed done. And so we created templates for those projects to make it even easier for them, so that they just had to edit it a little bit or add some contextual information. And so competitor analysis is one of those.
Okay, now from your standpoint or Practera's standpoint, what does a project team look like? Is it made up of a group of students, obviously? Is there a faculty member or faculty members, and who else is involved besides the company representative?
So there's definitely students involved. In most of the programs that we're involved in, the faculty member operates as the faculty member, not necessarily being in the project team and working with the students to get that particular project done. They're providing advice, support on like overseeing the entire cohort of students, as opposed to being specifically in the project team, but they do give advice and support and resources to the students. The same as the program manager. If in a lot of cases, the program manager sometimes is also the faculty member. So they, again, sit across the entire program as opposed to being directly in a team of students that is working towards a project. And then the company person is what we would call the client. So the students are very clearly doing a project for that client with advice from the faculty member and the program manager as required. And so that's kind of how the setup is. The only other way that we do it is when we're operating in a paradigm where we believe that the students are really lacking the professional skills. We've actually introduced an industry alumni type mentor role into the consortium, because what we've learned is a lot of the faculty members have domain knowledge expertise, but they may not necessarily have an understanding of what it is to be an early career professional doing a project in a real work environment. So we've utilized the alumni at the university that are 2 or 3 years out, or maybe 2, 3, or 4 years out of the MBA program, to come back as an alumni representative and be a mentor for a student team.
Okay.
They enjoy doing it and get a lot of value out of it. They love to give back. They take a lot of pride in the students' work because it's a representative of them as well, because they're part of the institution too. So it's been a real win having them involved. If the students might be a little less ready for the industry, the real industry project, it's been a great solution to that problem.
Well, so you're also involved in alumni relationship building from the university standpoint.
Interesting way to, yeah. And a lot of the alumni that we tend to work with in this paradigm are alumni that are not yet at the stage where they're in a position to give financially to the university, but they do want to give back and stay connected. So it's a great way of allowing them to engage. And quite frankly, and what I found as a faculty member when I have been delivering programs, I can tell them about their professional skills and how inappropriate they are till the cows come home, and
Yeah.
they won't listen to me. But when they've got a alumnus that's now working at Deloitte, for example, telling them that that's unprofessional and they can't work that way, they listen a
Yeah.
lot more. So it's had a win on that front as well.
Okay, now jumping back to the outcomes for just a second. Are the project outcomes graded or evaluated?
Yeah. In most cases, the project and the delivery of the project is the assessment for the class. Usually there's an element of reflection, and in a lot of cases when people use Practera, we also have the ability to do formative and summative peer review processes automated in the system. So that's
Okay.
usually part of the professional skill learning outcome that's part of the program, but the projects are actually evaluated against a rubric. And in our paradigm, it's actually the client that is giving that grade and feedback, not the academic or the faculty member. So the faculty member will do a moderation step and make sure there's equity across, but it is actually the client that's giving the feedback and assessing the project in terms of its value for them.
Okay. Can students at the same university in the same business program uh, repeat project participation? In other words, one semester or one academic year, they're in one project, and then the next class, they can enroll in another project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, in University of Sydney is a great example of that. They have a scaffolded program from day one of their masters across the whole of the business school, and every semester they do a different, I guess, industry engaged program
Okay.
that is enabled by Practera, the technology. It increases in the level of industry engagement as they go through, but that's a scaffolded experience. And the final step is that Deloitte Innovation Program. So yeah, they can do multiple projects because the project is different every time as soon as they deal with a different client and a different team.
Right. Now, the evaluations, the feedback, and the assessments and so forth, is it appropriate for the student to put them into a portfolio for placement and job search?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few cases. I think going into the MBA paradigm, often you see a lot more NDAs and confidentiality type clauses in these types of programs, because the more experienced the students are, what you find is the more likely that the project is going to get closer to the some core knowledge or core IP that the industry partner has. So we always work with our partners to make sure that what the students are sharing publicly is okay. But yeah, we definitely see a lot, especially in the projects that we've scoped, and that the industry partners pick projects that we've done. In most cases, there's not really any proprietary information that comes out as a part of a part of that engagement or that collaboration. So it's completely fine for the students to be able to share that work.
Okay. Well, let's jump over to expectations management for a second and let you tackle the tips on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as much as where we got to trying to work on better project learning fit was because what we saw in the midst of the collaboration was all these mismatched expectations and things like that. So this was kind of the first problem we tackled, but then realized that if we did a lot more of that project learning fit up front, we had less of these issues as we moved through. And so a few, I guess, tips to identify mismatched expectations early on, specifically focused on that industry or that client side, not necessarily the student side, is if your sponsor or client isn't willing to be flexible on the scope of the project, and flexible within reason, like if they're not willing to expand the scope or decrease the scope or whatever, that has often been an indicator to me that they're looking at this as a real wanting a specific thing out of the project that they may not necessarily get, and they're kind of working on it more as an opportunity to get some free work, more so than also focusing on the learning outcome. And yes, you want the industry partner or the client to get valuable work done, but not at the detriment to the learning objective of the student. So often when there's not a lot of flexibility or whatever there, that's often been an indicator for me and our team that there isn't any kind of interest or appreciation for the learning side of the collaboration, and so can lead to conflict down the road, or ending up with a sponsor or client that's not happy with the work at the end because their expectation was that they were getting a professional project done by a consulting firm.
Right. I have a question that actually goes back to the previous slide, but at the same time, it begins to fit in here as well. Mary wants to know how the faculty respond when it's the industry partner that's actually giving the grade. Is there any resistance, especially given this slide where the client may well be disconnected or the mismatch of expectations may be occurring?
Look, in some cases, the faculty receptivity to that has been very different across the board. Some of them love it because it means that they don't have to do the grading.
Right.
They just have to moderate at the end. The rubric is set by the faculty, and so it's not like the industry partner can just slap on whatever score they feel like. And they're not actually really scoring. They're responding to a series of questions about the work that is then translated into a score that then becomes the grade. And so that it's not like they're going, this is A grade work. They're saying, based on my understanding, this is something that I would take back to my and immediately implement into my organization. And we've equated that to a bunch of points that then attribute to the score. So some of the faculty members don't like that at all, and they want to grade, and that's absolutely fine. But we always kind of really recommend that even if that's the case, you still want the sponsor client to be able to evaluate the student's work from their perspective, because whether that ends up being the score or part of the score or not, the students are getting a realistic perspective of what industry thinks of the quality of their work, which is a really valuable learning for the students, whether it is attributing to their score or not.
Okay. Let's go ahead to the interventions. I think given what we've talked about, the interventions are something that we all have to be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things that we've done to kind of help with these mismatched expectations is we implemented what we call a pulse check. So every week or every 2 weeks into the project, the student team or anybody involved in the team, so the client, the mentor, the student team, are asked a series of 3 questions: whether they think their team's on track or not, what stage of the team formation process they're at, and then whether they've engaged with their industry partner in the last week. And obviously on the industry partner side, that is, have they engaged with their team in the last week? And what we've managed to see over time in that is you can see dissonance in the team really easily by the way they answer those questions. It literally takes everybody a minute to do. And you as the program manager get really valuable insights. And we present that in Practera as a dashboard. You can kind of see a little photo of that. Basically, any of the red that you can see there is dissonance that we're going to, as the program manager or faculty member, jump on board and try and resolve. And we do that because if you can resolve the dissonance or the issues midway through the project, it means that the project ends up better at the end, and you've more likely got a client or a sponsor that's going to redo the project, and instead of kind of doing it once and realizing it was a horrible experience, and then the faculty only learning about that at the end.
Share with me looking at your number 3, the scope creep there. Yeah. Share with me a student. It seems like it would be the reverse for students wanting to go do less work rather than increasing the scope of the project.
Probably I've seen more so what tends to happen is that the students will a specific example I've had of a project I've had done for me as an employee of Practera is I wanted my end result, and my number one objective was a pricing model. But the students spent so much time in the research and understanding the market that they didn't get to the pricing model. And so scope creep isn't necessarily scope creep as in they're doing too much. It's not staying aligned to what it is that the industry partner actually wants. And that happens a lot in consulting. The consultants go off on a tangent because they get a really cool idea, but at the end of the day, the client is expecting the outcome that they've asked for. So it's one thing to really watch for.
So now going back to the project plan, is that how you keep the students on track and on scope or within scope?
Yeah, that's a really early indicator up front. So the industry partner presents the project brief and the template that we showed earlier, and then having the students do a project plan shows they have to almost restate the brief and what it is they're going to do, identify if they think that the brief is too large and kind of de-scope it or expand it. And then they have to kind of think through a logical plan of how they're going to execute that project. And then that gets submitted to the industry partner. And it's a really early check as to whether the students have understood what the brief actually means and what the industry partner wants before they even really get started with the project. So it really helps. And it also helps the program manager see which of the students that are misunderstanding what their client wants, and so they can pay closer attention.
Okay. The formative peer review, now you're pulling that together. That's an automated process.
Yes.
Question 1 is, have you been pooling the data from all of the projects for a particular university to share with them where the shortcomings are in their student groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So the universities that we work with quite a bit and have large volumes of students participating in programs, they're starting to get both benchmarks of what industry thinks about their students' work and where they're at in their professional skill development based on the professional skills that they're developing in programs we've been involved in. So yeah, it's really interesting data.
Okay, so this fits in with the accreditation bodies and the assurance of learning, because basically you're an outside entity with an outside industry partner that's assessing students' level of performance and being able to give it feedback so that the program managers can give the feedback to the faculty and the curriculum designers and on and on and on.
Yeah, we work quite closely from the data on the data side of the platform to measure a lot of those things and we do some interesting research projects in this space with learning analytics researchers, and yeah, we've been doing a lot of work on what models work, how you can use the data, learning analytics data from the program to improve the learning design of the program, all of those types of things, and to measure the learning value. And then we've done some longitudinal studies to measure the impact of these programs on students when they're 12, 18 months and 3 years out of the program.
Okay. I have two questions. Who pays for this? Is it the company, or is it the university, or is it the student?
So in most cases in Australia, it's a copay type environment. So when we started, it was both the industry partners and the institutions. It wasn't the student. So in a lot of models where initially early on, it was actually part of the curriculum. And so most of the courses that we ran or were a part of running sat within in a course. And so the institutions had, I guess, discretionary funds to help with the delivery of the courses. And so they paid for it. We've also been in situations as well where the government in Australia has seen the need in this area, particularly when it came to international students and first generation students. And so they, because they wanted to see more of those students engaged in experiential and workplace learning, they subsidized a lot of these programs. So the government paid for part of the payment and the university paid for another part of the payment. So it's compared to the volume, I guess the volume of students we're able to do, the money, I guess the money question isn't that big of a deal anymore because we're able to do it at such scale. Right. And that's kind of the value of it.
I think the next two questions, or the two questions that just popped up, will be taken care of in the next couple of slides. So let's go on to the case studies.
So yeah, I just pulled out a few of the programs that we do and some of the lessons that we learn along the way within those programs. So I'll try and whip through these fairly quickly. But one of the things, like peer review of professional skills. So when we were running that Deloitte innovation program, it's called the Next Innovation Accelerator, the students, basically the feedback we got at the end of the semester, one semester, was you can't throw us in a team and expect us to learn teamwork by osmosis, which was a fairly fair thing. And I think that that's one of the biggest issues that I've seen in a lot of these programs is that the students are thrown in teams, but we're not actually teaching them how to work in teams well. And the impact of that is they actually learn bad team behaviors. So we're actually decreasing their teamwork skills instead of increasing their teamwork skills, which is a problem. So some of the symptoms of that, if you may have these problems in your courses, like one student completing all the work, and then students hiding conflict, but delivering substandard work. So it's so obvious that something's going on, but they're saying everything's fine. But what the aggregate of their work is nowhere near what they do individually themselves. And so, there's a problem there. And so what we introduced was basically a formative and summative peer review process that we then automated in our technology. So we didn't have to do the labor intensity of flipping all that data around.
Okay.
And what we realized is that how the impact of that was that the students had a forum and a structured process to talk about the differences and to actually get more insight into how they were going and how they were performing as a team member. So it enabled them to work better together earlier on in the process. So it really helped well, really worked well.
And case number two.
Case number two, the pre-scoped projects. So that was a big win when we were looking at a program that was quite significant in scale. So we were trying to deliver a program for 1,000 students with really low resources in terms of human resources. And so sponsors and project recruitment was labor intensive, and then the projects were too difficult for the skill level of the students. So the symptoms of that is what we saw was, at the end of the day, we were just taking any project we could get our hands on. And then we were having problems in the delivery, and then unhappy sponsors who won't continue to participate because the project was the wrong type of project for the students. So we kind of, those two problems were almost killed with one stone, and that was having those pre-scope projects. So instead of having to go out and spend all the time working with the industry partners, we offered some common projects, and they were kind of picking off the shelf and then customizing from there. It was less effort on their side, but they were still getting a really great project, and it meant it was more closely aligned to the learning outcomes as well, and the level that the students could handle. So it was a win on all sides.
Okay. And number 3.
Yeah. So number 3, I don't know if this is a challenge with a lot of institutions here, but in Australia, we have over 500,000 international students doing their education in Australia all around the country. And one of the problems that we see in that paradigm is, one, the institutions struggle to place international students in internships and business projects because the industry partners or businesses can't employ those students, so they don't see the value of having international students participate in these types of programs on their side. And then the international students, if they were in project teams, often took a backseat role in the program. They're a little bit shy, maybe a little bit more timid. So what we actually did is we designed a program or some projects where the international students were actually put in the expert seat. So international export, we have a lot of Chinese students in Australian higher education institutions, and a lot of Australian businesses that want to do business in China. So we actually developed a whole series of projects that Australian companies could do that really leverage the knowledge of a Chinese student who has grown up in China, or a student that's from Japan or Korea or India or whatever. So we actually kind of flipped the model, and instead of having those international students feeling like they were just an addition to the project team, they actually became the expert. And in the end, a lot of them actually got recruited. When we first ran this program, they got recruited to actually execute the projects that they'd done as part of the program.
Okay. Sort of implied in what we've talked about is all of this was face-to-face. Are you doing virtual work projects as well?
Yeah, all of those the programs that I went through there in those 3 case studies. The Next Innovation Accelerator we have done that fully online, and it works well, driven by the technology, and they do they do meetings virtually. Global Trade Accelerator is this one that we have right here. It is fully online. The students are often in different states in the country, and can be working with a partner in a different location as well. So the whole thing has been structured for the online paradigm.
Okay. This slide intrigued me, and I think it's going to answer one of the questions. I would like for you to explain to me what you mean by free trials here, and what a couple of these mean.
Yeah, well, what we've done as a company, we've always been really passionate of sharing the knowledge that we've learned through testing all these models of experiential learning and all of that sort of stuff. So the way that we've done that is we've actually created Practera Go, which are pre-templated experiences and pre-structured and pre-designed experiences that we've used in our programs and developed and iterated over time. And so there's a few of those on the website on practera.com that you can go and get a free trial of and have a play around with as a student, so you can see it in the student perspective, all the learning content, all of the accessible items, and all of the rubrics of how they're graded and all that sort of stuff. So it's there so you can, I guess, dig a little deeper into some of the things we've done, which hopefully will help maybe with some ideas and tips to improve programs or solve problems that are arising.
Okay. As we're starting to wrap this up, if any more questions come in, or if I think of any more questions, please submit them, or I'll ask them. But if you think of a question as soon as we get done here today, feel free to email Nikki. Here's her email address, and she'll be glad to respond to you one-on-one. You can do the same thing with me. Just send me an email or text me. All of you have my contact information. Nikki, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think that's it. I'm, as I said, I'm very happy to receive questions, and if there's anything that I said that I glossed over because of the time that it was of interest to you, and I'm happy to share like some of the templates that we have and things like that. Feel free to reach out. As I said, we're very happy to share the knowledge that we have gained over the years of doing this to help others do this in a scaled way. So yeah, happy to share and answer questions.
Okay, my next webinar, June 19th. I've got Phil Blackman from Ithaca College. They've created a new MBA program with a concentration in entertainment and media management. So he's going to talk about how 3 schools on the same campus came together to create this program. Final notes. First of all, thank you all for attending, and a special thanks to Nikki. This was great. I really, really enjoyed this, and I learned a lot. And I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and taking the time to spend with us today, Nikki. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's great.
Good. Have a great day. And as always, you can email me at rgalsop@mbanewsdigest.com. Thank you.